That works. It lights me up a little bit.
Oh, that was when we were...
Yeah.
That's when it was straight ahead.
Okay.
When I pointed at you.
No, we're good.
Try it. Blind us.
Blind you straight into the face.
Alright. Welcome, everybody, to episode 40 of Chewing the Cud. I don't think you even put that in the title. That's crazy. 40 weeks. 40 some odd weeks.
We're closing in on a year.
This week's discussion, this is a weekly live stream where we sit down at the kitchen table and discuss things related and unrelated to regenerative agriculture. We'll usually start off with some brief introductions, and then we'll move into a topic for the week. The topic for this week is going to be calving. That's what we're in the thick of right now here on the farm because we have a vast majority spring calving herd. And so we're just going to be answering going into detail, I guess, about a lot of things related to calving on the move and how to manage, troubles calving and stuff like that when you're moving your herd twice a day, because it's not like we lock our animals up at any point in time to address the calving situation and then just continue. Someone coming in the window.
Something's outside.
Anyway, we'll just have a discussion about that, and Connor's gonna have a bunch to contribute because he's had a good amount of experience at this point. We got him dropping out left and right. So anyway, we'll get into that, and then obviously some question answer, ask us anything is the best part about this whole session, and that'll open up after our discussion about calving. And it can be related to calving, any of those questions or topics or whatever, or completely unrelated. So we're excited to jump into it.
All right, without further ado, my name is Isaac Tapnan, this is Ben Hawley, and this is the newbie, Connor Helton. We're interns here at Green Pastures Farm, where we're interning under Greg Judy. He is the owner, along with his wife Jan. We run around 370 head of South Pole cattle, roughly 160 St. Croix sired hair sheep. We sell bale rollers. 2 weeks ago they forgot to say the guard dogs. We do sell guard dogs.
Yep. Livestock guardian dogs. We host grazing schools, farm tours, shiitake mushrooms we grow, a lot of different things. And so we're here learning what we can, enjoying the ride, enjoying the work and the crappy days sometimes, and the long days.
Yeah. And so it's good. We're loving what we're doing. So yeah,
absolutely.
Excited to have Connor on too.
Yeah, just split reaction. What did you think of this? This was your first full week.
Yeah.
What did you think?
It was. I mean, I loved it.
Okay.
It was a really long week.
Yeah,
it was
especially
a long
the
week.
end of the week.
Yeah,
There
it was long
some
for us,
things
too.
that went down.
So we can get into that if people are interested. Ask a question about it. But it's a chaotic time of year, that's for sure.
Yep.
If you can make it through these 2 months and feel like you still have your head on your shoulders, you're basically going to be good to go for the rest of the year, because it's definitely a wild ride for the next 2 months. But we'll get into that because it all is related to calving season. So I guess let's just start off with what our calving window is in situation for people who aren't aware. You know what I mean, about how we manage bulls being separated versus when they're allowed to breed, that kind of deal.
Mm-hmm. So we do things a little differently than a lot of people here at Green Pastures Farm. So the bulls go in July 1st, and they remain in until March 1st. So what that means is anytime from April 1st all the way through December 1st?
No, it'd be December 1st, yeah.
December 1st, we can have calves. So that's our breeding window. Well, most people, they've got their breeding window 30, 40 days max. We kind of spread it out, but that being said, the majority of our calving is concentrated in the April, May, June side of that window. And so this time of year, it's like every day we're out there looking, here's dropping a calf, dropping a couple calves here and there. And so it adds to the...
Oh, yeah.
It makes it interesting.
Just to put it in perspective, if we had 125 calves tagged last year, so about 130 in total, because there's some that start to slip through the cracks, or we end up culling, or they end up dying or something like that. So we had about 130 plus calves, and 75 of them were born by the end of May. Yeah. So over half last year was born by the end of May.
And 96 of them were before August.
Before August, yeah.
So, and then it petered out after that.
Yeah.
Kinda.
So it's like a big spike and then it tails out, and then there's
another little spike.
There's another little hump, in the end of the summer, early fall.
Mm-hmm.
But
that might change too.
Yeah, we're predicting, because last year was the first year that Greg had separated the bulls that way. They used to. Oh, there goes the light. They used to. They used to stay in all year round, and so 2 years ago was the first year he had separated them out for that length of time, meaning our first year, me and Isaac, our first year here was the first year he saw the repercussions of that window of removal, and so we had a lot of spring calving, and this year it's going to, they breed back early, and so there's this general shifting towards the spring, so we might be at like 90 or 100 by the end of May. You just never know.
I kind of hope we are.
Yeah.
Shorten it up.
Yeah,
a little bit.
It's like a Band-Aid.
Might as well rip it off all at once.
Yeah,
I'd rather have. If you're gonna deal with 3 calves, you might as well deal with 7 calves in a day. So I don't know.
If you're gonna spend the time looking for them.
Yep, and
comb
just
in the woods.
Yeah.
The thing is,
we're gonna get into that.
So with the calves, which this is kind of like jumping ahead.
Yeah, go for
it. But it's so. Since we're moving every day and we're making a lot of cattle drives, once they get about a week or 2 weeks old, they're old enough that they can pretty much do anything. Move any move. We don't have to worry about them. But it's those first 2 weeks that we're constantly making lists, making sure we got everything caught up, making sure no one's left behind sleeping in the cedar or whatever. And so if you can shorten that window, everything turns 2 weeks around the same time, and then you're kind of home free at that point. So and so it's when you have like a calf here, and then a couple weeks you have another calf, and then so you're always dealing with young calves on the cattle drives. That's what really is hard to do. So
and the reason why we wouldn't shorten that window in order to achieve that is because when you do that, it's just more time of the year that you have a separate bull herd, and having that one herd for the maximum amount of time throughout the year that you possibly can is just going to help so much with your recovery times. And that horsepower, that engine is bigger, so you get a lot more land impact and sort of ecosystem like regeneration potential when you have a herd that size. So
let's say another thing. The reason it's so spread out too and not more concentrated, it probably will be 10 years down the road it's going to be more concentrated. The reason it's so spread out is, was it 3 years ago? 2 or 3 years ago, Greg was just leaving his bulls in 100% of the time. They were always in there, so he's getting calves all year round, and that worked for 4 years for him or something. And the last 2 years that he did it, both winters he had like 20 calves born in January in the middle of a snowstorm and lost like almost all of them. And so that like really put a sour taste in his mouth. And so that next spring he separated out the bulls in March and started doing that. And so last year was the first year we saw the impact of that. And so it was definitely highly concentrated in April, May, but it was spread out. We're expecting this year it's going to be even more concentrated in April, May, and then be less spread out, and then in
long after we're gone.
in the next years it'll be even hopefully even more concentrated to where maybe someday it's like it is a 30-day window, and you can leave the bulls in there 6 or whatever, not 8 months out of the year.
Because once they're bred, they're bred.
Right. You don't have to worry about it. So you might as well leave the bulls in there. But
so why don't we just cover because really the crux of the issue and where the crux of the chaos, I should say, when it comes to spring calving with this kind of system that we've got is that we're moving the animals twice a day, and in the spring the grass is growing as fast as it does. Because if you're interested in managing for the spring flush, we did a whole live stream on that a couple weeks ago, so go check that out. But if you're managing for the spring flush properly, you're moving your animals as fast as you ever do in the entire year. So you're covering ground. Like we'll go around the entire farm rotation in sometimes as short as about 30 days. And so that means there's a lot more movement and a lot more drives and a lot more walking. And when you've got mothers that are trying to calve, it's antithetical. Like the two of them do not mix very well. And so the question then becomes, all right, if you've got a spring calving herd for a lot of beneficial reasons, how the heck do you manage it with moving them that often?
Because the calves don't like to move.
Because the calves don't like to move, and the mothers are trying to calve, and then you can't find calves in certain paddocks, and how do you manage all that? And I guess let's just break it down really simple about what do we do even before we even go into a paddock, you know what I mean, to make it easier on ourselves. that type of a deal.
You mean like once they're in there?
Yeah, or just when we're planning it out, like what we were doing when we were when we were sitting down there. What do you wanna chime in about like what we did? You know, when we were sitting down trying to plan out where they went, like, you know, there were certain things that we were doing to make our lives a little bit easier. You know?
Right. Yeah, and I mean, a big thing we talked about was, you know, we don't want to make these super long drives with a bunch of new calves, and so just making sure that I know we at one point we were planning a really long drive, and they were like, we're gonna have a bunch of calves, so we're gonna actually park them in a separate paddock that's not as far, so that, you know, because we are going to have calves, it's like they don't have to go
the full distance
far, because
break it up for 2 days or whatever. Yeah,
because at that point we're gonna just be carrying. There's gonna be too many calves to carry. To get them to the next paddock.
Yeah, because they get tired. Like when they're little guys,
especially 2-3 days old. Like they're not conditioned to walk a mile up and down these Rucker hills.
Yeah, that's for sure. So that's definitely a big one is planning those drives accordingly, and if you can split them up.
Another big one too is like some paddocks we have part of like half the paddock is like timber or something or brushy overgrowth or stuff that's easy to hide in, and so a lot of times going into a paddock, we'll fence those completely off so that the cattle can't get in there. They can't get in there and calve. We don't have to worry about walking in there and looking for cows that had calved. We just have the peace of mind of knowing they're in the paddock and we can see where they're going to calve at. And so that's a huge one too.
I would rather set up twice as much fence to not have to be like combing woods and thorn patches and boggy areas and stuff for calves. It's just, it takes more time and more posts, and sometimes that's not a luxury, but man, it's worth it in my opinion to try to fence them out. And then there's areas even that we won't even touch. Like we were originally planning on going to a particular farm and hitting it right now because you want to get it before the grass starts to get too lignified, and we just decided, you know what?
80% timber.
80% timber. That paddock in particular, and so it's too many places to hide. We can't fence all of it off. So it's better off. We're better off just skipping it, and we'll come back to it on the next rotation when we have a lot more older calves. And maybe it'll be a little more lignified, or it'll gotten a little bit away from us. But
the nice thing about that paddock too, though, is that paddock we skipped. It has a lot of big blue stem, which is a warm season grass, and so hopefully the next rotation, whether it's May or June, that big blue stem is going to be 6-8 inches tall, and that's going to be exactly what they're going for at that time, and it's going to be primo forage. Like the fescue might be a little bit tall and lignified, but underneath they're going to have all those warm seasons there to eat as well. So that was made the decision a little bit easier too.
Exactly. So those are really like the precursors that you would be looking for before you even start moving or start going to a certain area of your farm. Look at your drives and how long you're going to be, and can you split them up? Look at those paddocks that you're going to that are extra brushy or have a lot of hiding spots. Can you fence that off, or is it just so brushy you don't even want to touch it? And sometimes that's the best option. So that's what you do before you even get in there. Now you're in there, right? And mothers are calving left and right, and you have to make moves. Like, what would you do if we made a move and a mother didn't have her calf? Like what's the thought? There's sort of a thought process we'll go through depending on the situation.
So say we know she calved, we saw her calve that morning, and then when we moved her in that paddock, we saw she calved, and so the evening we're getting ready to move. We move the mob. We notice she's in the paddock with the mob, and their calf's nowhere to be found, probably laying down in the other paddock. What we would do is, if we have the luxury, just leave. Don't leave any back fence. Just let them be able to go back into the old paddock so that the mother on her own can go back in the night, get the calf, and get the calf caught up with the mob. That's going to be so much more efficient than you like us trying to go walk around looking for calves that blend in like a baby fawn. I mean, you got to basically step on it in order to find it.
It's incredible. You'd think you could find it.
Yeah. Especially if you haven't tagged it yet.
We wasted so much time doing that.
Yeah. And so that's a big one. If you can leave no back fence, your cows are going to do the work of because the cow wants to stay with the mob. The mob is the protection for her and for her calf. Coyotes aren't going to mess with the mob, and usually big predators, even like wolves and bears, aren't really going to mess with the mob too much. Just because it's like such a big
intimidating
thing, and so she's going to want to keep that calf as close yet away from the mob as she can. So if you can leave a empty back fence, no back fence, don't do it. Yeah. Don't leave a back fence. Let her do the work, and it'll save you so much headache.
Yeah. If you have to put a back fence in, and she doesn't have her calf, you're better off leaving the mother behind, and sorting her off, leaving her back there, moving the mob into the next paddock, and then waiting. Usually in the morning is when they'll have them. In the evening, they typically like to hide, and so in the morning, the next morning, go and check early before it gets too hot, especially later in the summer. And 9 out of 10 times they'll have the calf the next day. And when she's got it, then just let her into the next paddock or drive her separately across the road or whatever. That's the best case scenario, because you can try to sort the mother back and then watch to see if she'll go get the calf. But there are so many times where they know you're watching, and so they'll just lead you completely astray. They'll go and stand in the opposite corner that the calf is and just be bawling her complete head off over there.
So if you sort her back and she doesn't go immediately to the calf, within I would say 10 minutes, just let her be. Don't even try to follow her around longer than that. She'll just play the games with you. And believe me, they've tricked us a lot.
So many times.
She's leading us to the calf. Nope, she's just walking probably on the opposite side of the paddock. So.
Yep, and definitely there's a risk that because the calf is being left unattended, that it could get picked off by something. And we can say that of all the times we did that last year, it might have happened once and we don't even know that for a fact.
Yeah, we don't know that for a fact.
So
we don't know for sure.
Yeah, what happened to the calf? Yeah,
I would say that we didn't have any
that got picked off, and so eventually what ends up happening is the calf gets old enough that it's like, screw this, mom, I'm not hiding in the brush anymore, and so it's just up playing around with the mob and likes to play with the other calves, and so
it's usually the first 2 to 3 days that they hide.
Yeah, and sometimes it's longer. Like sometimes they'll be stubborn.
Oh, like that 080.
Yeah,
she was hidden for 6 days,
almost a week, and we were thinking she was dead or something, and we ended up, and the mother was keeping her up.
We had she wasn't. We had her sorted.
I thought the one in Venus's is what I was talking about.
Oh no, I was thinking. Remember, she we thought she was dead for sure.
Yeah,
and we're like, oh, there's no hope, and so we left the mother with a bull calf or something
back there with her.
It was a bull. It was one of the older bulls, and we're like, yeah, that calf's dead, and we finally just. After 2 or 3 days, we go back there, and Greg's like, you might want to just go down and check on her just to see if she has her calf. We're like, okay, but we were thinking
she's
dead.
Not going to have it.
We get there, and there's just this little heifer calf walking around,
yeah.
Oh my goodness. And so we got her in the weaning pen, and we were able to get her back with the mob, but it's
it's just crazy. They know exactly where they are.
We had all the gates open in the previous paddock so that she could go anywhere that we thought it was.
And for the last 3 or 4 days.
But we're like, I don't know where it is. We were clueless. But.
So that's a big one. That's a huge one. Let the mothers do the work. You got to trust them more than sometimes you would like.
Because they're smart.
They are smart.
I mean, there's the occasional one that's just stupid, but I would say the only was that weird time that we had. Yeah. Other than that, every other time, the mother knew exactly where the calf was.
And you need to be attentive, because there's a difference between a mother that's hiding her calf and a mother that's abandoned her calf. And so, they act differently, and that's just something that you sort of have to develop a sense for. But also, you can look at the udder and sort of sometimes that's even hard to tell. They produce a ton of milk. They just get really tight udder. Really tight udders,
especially when it's a young calf.
Well, especially when it's a young calf that's not drinking that much, and so it'll happen really quick, and you're like, oh, the calf's not getting anything to drink or anything to eat or whatever. But it's just getting a little bit. And then sometimes you can tell if she's got a smaller udder, it's a really robust calf. It'll milk out one of those teats, and you'll notice that that one teat is not filled like the other ones, and there's something sucking on that. And so that she's probably taking care of it. But if she's just not chock full of milk
and just not paying any attention to you or The big thing is like they'll pay attention to you because as soon as you go in the paddock, you're a predator. Yeah. They're watching you to make sure. Oh, you're not gonna mess Junior up, are you? You're not gonna hurt my calf.
Yeah.
So they're watching you. They may not be paying attention to their calf, but if they're looking at you, that's a good chance that they're aware that they have a calf and that they're, even if you don't see it anywhere around, you know, if they've got it hid. But if they're just don't even pay any attention, they got, you know, a tight bag, and they, which some of them are just less attentive, and that's just part of the way they are. But it's part, like you said, part of feeling it out and
and understanding,
learning.
And if a mother's not paying attention to her calf at all, and the calf, if you find the calf and the calf is really thin, you can tell that its stomach's not full, it's not licked off or something like that. That's a situation where you need to get that mother into a corral at the very, like, as soon as you can, because the calf is probably not going to live much longer.
Get her into the corral, hopefully in a head catch, and try to, you know, let the calf nurse, get the calf up there, make the calf suck, which the calf will want to suck because she's.
But sometimes they're too weak, depending on you know how long they've been there.
So a lot of times you gotta, you know, like get your finger in the mouth, get them to start sucking, and guide them to the teat and everything, and like do your best to get that milk inside them, because that, like that first 8 hours after they're born, if they don't get the right like colostrum or nutrition, it affects them for the rest of their life. That first 8 hours is the most critical point in that calf's life as far as like how they're going to perform
developmentally down the road for sure. And we have mothers that don't take the calf. That happened to us a decent amount last year, and it's just something that you got to deal with. I mean, I remember when we started talking about that in live streams a long time ago, people were like, "Man, I thought Greg's stuff all just went all perfectly all the time." But it's one of those situations where it's not a time when you want to be pulling out a video. So
we don't take many videos.
We don't take videos of that kind of stuff, but it happens.
I mean, it'd be good to. It'd be good to show that just for the you know, transparency of it, like and that's what talking about it right here helps too. Is like, we have troubles just like any other cattle rancher. Maybe Greg's figured out a lot of solutions to a lot of problems, and so maybe it runs a little bit more streamlined, but there's always going to be issues. Like that's just part of the job title is adapting and overcoming the problems that arise. So
so if you got a mother that doesn't take a calf, you just have to be persistent with that mother and that calf in the corral for up to a week or more, and depending on how long it takes. But there's some that are just so stubborn and don't get it that you can just tell they're just going to be kicking and headbutting their calf, you know, until the cows come home. No pun intended. And that's one that you're just going to have to sell, because you can't afford to have a mother that doesn't have a mothering instinct to her calves. The only ones that we'll give a break for, with ones that are, you know, incredibly difficult to deal with as far as mothers are concerned, are first calf heifers, because sometimes they just don't get it. They're a first time mother. You give them a little bit of a break. But if it's older cows that just continuously keep abandoning calves and not paying attention and butting their calves and for no reason, it's a good candidate for a call.
There's an old saying that goes like, you think God would have designed a better way for a calf to come into the world than through a heifer?
Yeah.
It's kind of a funny thing.
Because older cows, they just get it for the most part.
But the reason they get it is because they've done it. You know, like a heifer's never done it, so it's kind of expected that she's not going to get it.
And it doesn't happen every time. Like, we have some heifers that are incredible mothers, but there's a lot of them sometimes that aren't, and you just have to deal with it. You got anything to add as far as stuff that you observed with the calving situation, or tagging, or anything in general?
The big thing is just like, you got to know when to be urgent and when to be patient.
Yep.
You know, like, you can get all worked up and like, oh, she doesn't have her calf, and we need to get her sorted back, and we need to get this figured out, and try to like use your hand, you know,
use your management to get it done.
Work it out. And it's like, if you just be patient, put a little trust in the cow, as long as she's, you know, paying attention to you, or showing some signs of interest in the calf,
like licking the calf, mooing to it,
more often than not, she's gonna be fine. But then there's also times, like, say you've got a calf that, like, it's cold and rainy or something, and it gets a little bit of hypothermia, you need to get that calf in and try to help it, or try, if it's really far gone, try to save it at least, and then do your best to to do all you can.
And that's obviously in our context too. You know what I mean? Like, we can be pretty hands-on at a level of 379 head in total. But obviously, I mean, we don't know because it's the experience that we've got. But if you've got, I'd imagine if you've got herds of, much larger than that, 600, 700, 1,000, you're just not going to be able to have that kind of attention to each individual calf. But that's something that I'd be super curious about to get into a discussion with people. If there's people on here who run big operations and they have
like
methods.
The quantity, or what's the right word? Quantities of scale?
Economies of scale.
That's what I was looking for.
Because like maybe you lose a couple more calves as a result because you can't be as attentive. But the percentage is smaller because you have more calves every year. So anyway, that'd be an interesting discussion to get into. But Connor, you got anything to add that you've observed in your first week?
Yeah,
it makes it a lot more interesting.
It does. Like every morning and every evening you go out there and you're like, okay, we gotta, be on alert.
Yeah.
Is there a new calf? And we're trying to move. And,
we had one this evening. A new one.
Yeah.
So you gotta be ready for that. I think something I've seen both of you guys do a lot is you're always looking for cows that are like really close to calving.
Yep.
And that way, because you don't want to like go near the cow when they're about to calf or when they've just calved. And so if you have an idea of what cows are very close and what like when they're probably about to calve, you can kind of narrow it down of
like
okay,
from a distance.
It's probably that cow or it's probably this cow, because if you have those numbers in your head and you kind of know what they look like, it's like that kind of look like whatever, like 503 or 511 or whatever.
Yeah.
So just
that's
being
a big one.
observant of that.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, for sure. And right now it's not as. So later in the summer when we don't have as many that are calving, we'll actually write down lists of numbers that are close. And so when we do find a calf dropped in the pasture and like you have a short list of mothers you can go and look at to try to figure out who it was.
And a lot of times you can tell who it is, like if she has like not abandoned, but if she's not with her calf, you can look,
she's trying to fool you.
Like, oh yeah, she's calved.
But right now there's so many that it's not worth writing lists down. It's more just you're eyeballing them and saying, oh, she's super close. Oh, she's close, but not as close as she is, or whatever.
We
have one heifer that literally looks like a cat, like a calf could come crawling out of her any minute.
This sounds gross, but like a burn boil. Or like
a
that's how like
it's just
puffy
so
she is.
Her vulva is just incredibly puffy.
She is so close.
Which is great because when it's like really loose and floppy, like that there's probably gonna be a hallway sized opening for that cat to come.
Plenty of room.
Let's knock on wood, everybody, please. But sorry about that. That was probably vibrating the deal. But anyway. I think that's a good discussion. We cranked that for a while. I'm sure we got a gazillion questions.
Yeah, that's a really deep topic.
And we could keep going and going and going because it's the lifeblood of your operation is your calves. I mean, if you don't have calves, you're out of business. So dealing with that is probably the most critical time of the entire year. But
how are the puppies in training doing with the new calves? So the puppies aren't with the calves. So we don't really have to deal with that. Once the lambing, they're in with the sheep, the puppies are. Once the lambing happens, we're gonna probably have to take them out of the flock in order to
make sure the lambs get a chance.
Yeah, and just so that the puppies don't develop any bad habits.
Because the lambs are so tiny when they're born, and your mind's gonna be blown with how
it's like holding a banana.
Yeah,
really,
they're that little.
Not like that small.
But you could hold them in one hand.
It's like that's how
small they are.
It's like literally holding
that. Really?
Yeah.
I would not have thought they were that small.
It's crazy.
And so they're super fragile when they're first born, but I mean it's so incredible how quickly they like a calf it'll take a couple like an hour or two to get its feet underneath it and really be walking around and nursing really well or whatever. It'll be minutes for a lamb. Hits the ground. 5 minutes. It'll be up on its feet, tail going like this, sucking. Yeah,
Probably while the other one's still popping
out. Yeah, it's crazy. Their lambs are pretty fun, but yeah, we just can't have the puppies in there dealing with that. It's just too many temptations for a dog that's that young. Mm-hmm. So it's something that will be dealt with. Like when they're older, they don't have as much of those habits of chase, and so it's a lot easier to get them accustomed to sheep or to lambs, I should say. Sorry.
Mm-hmm. How soon after calving do the cows breed back?
That's a good question.
It obviously depends on the cow. Some cows are a lot more fertile or more, I guess you could say, efficient on grass. They're in better condition when they calve. And so the better the condition the cow is when she calves, the sooner she'll be able to breed back. Like there was a couple cows last year, like Longtail, 228 is her number. She bred back in the first cycle. Same way with Grandma.
So how long is this cycle?
20 days. It was like 21 days, and we could tell she was riding and she was in heat.
So the earliest possible that they can breed back is about 3 weeks.
Yeah.
From the time that they calved. Mm-hmm. And that's awesome if they can do that.
That's like the best case scenario. Yeah. Usually it's like maybe a month or two. So like if they calve in April and we put the bulls in July, most of them will be bred in that July window. So that's usually
it works out well.
That's why once Greg gets the curves shrunk towards the beginning, the calving curve as far as like when they're calving shrunk towards April, a lot of them will calve in April, have a couple months to get their condition back on them, get the calf so it's not needing as much, and then they can breed back in July and then calve again in that next April. That's the ideal scenario.
Yep.
That's what we'd wish every single cow could do.
Yep.
It's obviously not a cookie cutter.
Yep. Yep. And we've gotten into it before in other live streams about spring versus fall calving, but we can discuss that if people want it. If not, you can probably look it up. I think we did a clip on YouTube about it, so check that out. If not, ask it. We'll go over it again, but we'll wait and see if people are interested.
How necessary is shade for sheep? It's good to have some shade. They don't have the slick hide, at least Greg's sheep, like the cattle do.
Yep.
So they can't keep as cool, I guess.
But the advantage is that they're smaller.
And they're white.
Yeah. So like a smaller animal is not going to produce as much body heat in proportionally.
But they like to have some shade.
They love their shade, which is why you got to keep moving them, because they'll find a camp spot underneath some shade.
Yeah, if you've got enough or a small enough herd and you could build your own like shade mobile, like maybe you take like an old hay wagon chassis and weld some pipes on there and get some shade cloth or something, and you could fit 50 sheep ewes under the shade cloth, then you could move that shade around your pasture if you don't have trees or whatever, and then
flat.
You distribute all that manure out across the pasture as opposed to in the woods or in the trees dotting the landscape. And so
I will say that like with any animal, obviously, like if you can give them a really comfortable environment, they're going to do better. Mm-hmm. That being said, breeds are more tolerant to heat than others, and animals can get used to a given condition. So if the sheep are used to not getting a ton of shade and they're bred for that, like it's a heat tolerant sheep breed and they're okay with it, you can get them accustomed to the fact that they don't have shade in every paddock, and they'll do fine. But if you take a sheep breed that's not used to it and isn't bred for it, and you just throw them out into the beating sun, they're going to do pretty bad in the beginning until that epigenetic deal starts to kick in, and the sheep or the cattle or whatever start to do better with more of that full sun. But I mean, obviously, if you have shade, they're going to be more comfortable and perform a lot better. So,
all right, answered that one. Do the mama cows get protective, aggressive about her calves? How do you handle that?
We had a little situation today.
It wasn't that bad.
No,
I mean she was like super.
Do you want to describe it since you're the one protecting the two of us?
I was like, Connor, get the cow. He's like, okay. Chasing it around. She was trying to get to Ben and I.
Yeah. So it was like the newest calf. Today, and Ben goes up and grabs it, and Isaac has the tag
The
tagger, yeah. And so, and she just starts freaking out immediately, and I'm like back behind it.
That's what she's doing.
And Isaac's like, get the cow. I'm like, all right. So I just take off. She's like running circles around like us as he's trying to tag her, and so I'm just trying to like get in front of her and just shoo her off, but she wasn't like super aggressive, and like once I stepped at her and stuff, she would just take off in the circle again, and she'd start. I mean, she was just trying to get to her calf.
The big thing is if you can get their mind off their calf, like you were doing, you were like stepping at her, getting her out, getting that prey instinct in her. She wasn't like aggressive. She was like, oh, I need to get out of the way, like that's the big thing, and just making it quick, like in scenarios like that. But Greg's called for docility in his herd, and so that's like the very few that there's like maybe 2 or 3 that act like that.
And if you are in a situation where your cattle are not as docile as Greg's, which is most people, you sometimes just have to rely on the 4-wheeler, where
throw it on the
4-wheeler, speed away from the mother, and she's like trying to figure out where it is, and then tag it while you're away from the mother, and then make sure you bring it back and give it to the mother so she gets...
A lot of times, too, as soon as you put it on the 4-wheeler, as long as the calf's not bawling, she doesn't, like, it's like
an invisibility cloak.
Yeah, it's like, gone, and then she's like, what? Where'd it go? And she takes off out down the pasture looking for it, bawling for it.
But the only thing in that scenario Isaac and I were worried about is just if she smells the calf and sees that she puts 2 and 2 together that we have the calf in between the two of us.
Especially if the calf was bawling.
She could just, I mean, even if she just puts her head down and tries to shove us out of the way, she's a big animal, and that could do some damage. So you just want to avoid that. It's not like she's coming in to pound us necessarily. You just don't want to take that chance. And we talked about that in our cattle handling episode too, about safety is always the number one priority. So you gotta watch your back. Even if they are docile, you have to assume that it's still...
Just always keep an eye on them.
It's like some switch could just flip in their head in that split second, and they could do something that they typically wouldn't do. So you gotta always keep that in the back of your head, for sure.
Yeah, I've seen some videos of cows that I would not want to get in anywhere near their calf. And that's just putting yourself... I mean... let's not get to that.
Yeah.
What's the best size fiberglass for H-brace on 5 strand? 2-inch or bigger?
Yeah, 2-inch or bigger
is probably ideal. We've got the 1.5-inch sucker rods, but that for 5 strand, that's not quite.
Gonna cut it.
That's not quite stout, beefy enough.
It's Greg Judy terminology there, folks. Stout.
So, folks.
I know.
We're turning into Greg Judy.
Yeah. I told him that one of these days if I wake up and I'm wearing glasses and have a toothpick sticking out of my mouth,
just kick me.
Just kick me or something. Make me snap out of it.
Oh, that's good.
But anyway.
So like 2-inch, Greg sells, they call it like foam filled. They've got like a fiberglass wall, and then they've got foam inside. Those work really well for corners. We've also got some 3-inch, and then we've also got some 4x4-inch, like they're like
squares.
Those also work. Those are a little more expensive.
You can like hang a gate on those 4x4s. They're
that H-brace.
They're that strong.
Oh, you can probably do it on a single post if you get it, especially if you put it in Satcrete.
Yeah. And people have asked before, does the foam filled affect rigidity? And really, like, I guess the technical answer would be yes, but the follow up to that is like to what extent, because they're as rigid as you're ever gonna need it, and they don't make the solid ones anymore. At least where we source the fiberglass from.
And plus, if you have to cut the post, cutting through a solid fiberglass
or
post
drilling into it
takes like an hour.
Yeah, it's incredible.
I mean, it's like, and it just dulls blades like crazy.
Yeah, and dulls bits too.
Yeah, drill bits. So it's nice when you go through just a wall of fiberglass and then it's foam. Mm-hmm. You don't have to deal with a ton of fiberglass to get through. But yeah, they're plenty strong enough for fencing applications. Like way stronger than you would ever need. So, yeah. What time of year would you cull a sheep to eat yourself? Oh, fall, and then for me personally, I would wait a full 1.5 years.
Yeah.
So like if the lamb or the wither or whatever is born in the spring, let it be 1 year old, and then that next fall.
Yeah, or older.
Or older.
Yeah,
older is not necessarily. I mean,
it
there's
can
a
be.
point, but like,
yeah, but
I would go over 2 years, probably 3 years.
Yeah,
maybe.
3 years is probably about the limit. Who knows? Maybe
it's
like 5 years is incredible.
I try it.
Like aging wine.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, at that point, it's obviously mutton, but like still, the reason that we butchered them in the fall, and the reason you do the fall is just because they have a lot of fat build up, and lamb fat is unbelievable. And then when
they were 2-year-olds,
almost 3.
Yeah, they were 2, almost 3.
Yeah.
So you wouldn't have to wait that long.
No.
But those withers had like an inch of fat on them.
So
they were.
Good.
I mean, we might have now.
They're in there. There's a set of lamb chops that are in there with a fat cap
literally
that big.
like that. Like we also we butchered 2 withers that were that old, and we also butchered a wither that was just like 8 months old, and there was like hardly any fat on it and not much meat. So it's like
the carcass size, you just get way more bang for your buck.
It obviously takes a lot longer, and if you were doing it for production, that doesn't make any sense to keep them that long. But if it's just for your own self, just for your own enjoyment, for your own consumption, I would wait longer.
The only way that you could probably make it work production wise if you were waiting that long is if you were able to charge a premium for them and people were buying that. Like if you were selling them to high end restaurants and they were buying it at
because
top
of your
top because of the excess fat and the size of the chop and whatever. If they were paying top dollar for that kind of stuff, maybe you could make the economics work, but other than that, it's just too long. It's too long for a sheep. The advantage of sheep is that they're fast. Like fast to mature, fast to reproduce. So at that point, you're basically just raising cows. Like that's as long as you have to wait to finish a steer. So, anyway.
What are y'all's thoughts on using chemical fertilizer or poultry litter to increase dry matter production and increase the overall stocking rate in conjunction with mob grazing? Yeah, so that's a really good one. A lot to it.
That's like a whole topic in and of itself.
Yeah.
We can do a little like highlight reel of just initial snapshot thoughts of that kind of stuff.
You want to start?
I would say you need to be careful with fertilizers, with synthetic fertilizers in general.
Even poultry litter.
Poultry litter you have to be careful with because it's well, I'll address the poultry litter thing in a second because it's sort of a separate class in some ways, even though there's some similarities. But with synthetic fertilizers, you just have to be so careful because you're seriously upending any sort of biological ecosystem function that's going on in that soil, in that top couple inches of that organic matter. All those microbes and earthworms and nematodes and fungi and symbiotic bacteria and plant root nodules and stuff like that. All of that has this balance that you're trying to develop to build soil and to increase fertility. And once you start adding synthetics into that mix, it's very difficult to fully comprehend what's going on as far as altering that balance. And what Greg will say is there are certain situations where it might make sense to use a synthetic fertilizer to get yourself going, and then not be married to it, and then just carry on with your normal grazing practices and supplementing hay. Because
if you don't have anything out there to work with, you'd have no or very little carbon or biomass out there. That fertilizer is going to give you that jump to then get the carbon back on the ground and get that cycle started.
But I would this is me speaking from my own experience. This is take for what it's worth. A 2-year intern versus a 20-year expert. You know what I mean? So just putting that out there. But I would still be extremely hesitant to use synthetic fertilizers because I think it's going to hurt you long term as far as the health and biological processes. I think there's other ways to go about it. I think figuring out ways that you could utilize different kinds of organic matter. Yeah, exactly. Like poultry litter potentially, although you got to be careful with that depending on where you're sourcing it from, because it could be chock full of antibiotics and all sorts of nasty stuff if it's from a conventional poultry house.
Wormers and stuff that kill your soil.
So you just got to be aware of that. It's also hot, meaning it's very high in nitrogen.
And sometimes, that's just bedding, and so a lot of times you'll have dead chickens that are mixed in it, dry feathers, all kinds of stuff. So going into that, you need to be aware that that might be what you're spreading out, which that's going to decompose too. it might be unsightly for a little while.
Yep. But I'd just start looking at alternative methods of using, maybe stealing some ideas from a biodynamic side of things. Maybe using.
So there's someone using milk.
Yeah, spraying raw milk on stuff.
Pasture.
Using.
Although Greg didn't find any difference,
but some people have found a difference if you can source that kind of stuff, which is hard to source. Hard to get a dairy that's okay with just shipping off.
Yeah, because there's a lot
of red tape in order to get that done.
If they get caught, there's a big no-no for them.
Yeah, I don't really know the details about what's legal and what's not legal, so I'm not going to recommend any of that.
It's probably depending on the state. But.
Or, obviously like composts are difficult to come by, but you just never know what kind of situation you got. Maybe you've got municipal composting, maybe your town or your city or whatever does composting and they want somewhere to offload it. Maybe you could cut a deal with them to take X number of tons of compost and spread that.
That would be awesome.
That would be incredible if you could source that. But
using the community's waste.
Yeah,
that's
exactly.
Super cool.
So,
and then grow food for the community.
Yeah, so it's
like tying in the cycle.
It's that kind of stuff you got to start thinking about, because there's a lot of other ways that you can get microbial activity and increase soil organic matter and that kind of stuff, where you're boosting that ecosystem as opposed to just putting basically like a synthetic salt, so to speak, on the land, which is just incredibly artificial in the scope of that like biological system. So anyway, it's a rant, and we could go into a whole topic about that. And I'm reading a book on it right now, so that's why I've been thinking about it. It's on my mind. But anyway,
I was saying, you were saying stuff that I was like, I haven't heard you say that before.
Yeah, so
that's cool.
Anyway,
all right,
but we can get
discussion
before. But again, it's just one man's opinion, I could be barking up the wrong tree, but I don't know. Leave an idea in the comments below, and we'll see what happens. You know what I mean? So anyway.
All right, I got a really interesting question.
Let's hear it.
Do you have a portable corral head catch for the situation where you have to put a cow in a headlock and let her calf suckle, or do you have to move that cow and calf back to home? That would be awesome.
So portable.
Like that thing that we had at the Green Hills Farm Project.
Portable corral.
You could just haul it over to Marshall's.
Yep.
Put a couple cattle panels on there, or not cattle panels.
Yep.
Like corral panels.
Yep.
Get her in there, let the calf suck without having to get her to a corral.
All you would need even is you just need some like steel gates. You know what I mean? Just a couple of them to wire to something. You could get that thing set up as long as you haul it in there. You probably get it set up in under an hour.
Yeah. That's true though. Would it
just
save,
takes time.
Would it be better than
because
just walking her to the
corral? Connor, you can explain the situation that we ran into. You right with like the deal with that
513.
513.
Yeah.
Like how did that go down? Because she basically abandoned a calf.
Yeah.
The farthest location, probably one of the farthest locations she could be from a corral.
Yeah. So we went out there that morning, and there was just, it was pouring down rain.
Yeah,
so it was super muddy.
Of course.
Yeah, it was super muddy. There's this calf running around bawling. There's no cow coming to it. No cow even reacting to this calf. Mm-hmm. And so we're trying to figure out who the mother is. That took us,
a while.
Several hours to...
Yeah.
An hour and a half to 2 hours. Well, we got her
We
initially.
had an idea.
We thought it was her, but...
It's so hard to tell.
But then it's super muddy out there. Oh. We have to bring... Greg had to bring the truck and the livestock trailer. We had to go grab some gates and set up a whole lane to get her in there, and then we have to pull the livestock trailer in there. It's super muddy. We're just worried about getting it stuck.
Yeah.
And then
the Dodge just having transmission issues.
Yeah. So we get the cow in there, we grab the calf, and then take them to the corral. And so that whole process was probably 4 hours
of getting that done.
Of getting that done. But the thing is, I guess with that, if you have that portable, it takes you, you have to haul it over there, you have to set it up, and then if you are
some of those are pretty.
Yeah,
I've
never seen one.
Right,
So
I've seen some that where the corral's on a trailer, and then the gates fit on the trailer with it.
Interesting.
And so you set the corral down, you set the gates up, and then you've got your and the gates, all you have to do is move them and slide a pin in.
Huh.
There's a pin that goes through, there's there's 2 like eyelets or like 4. And you just get them lined up, slide the pin in, and then you've got all the way around.
I think that would be super interesting to look into.
I guess the question is it like one economical to do that?
Right, yeah.
But also, we've left 513 and her calf in that corral for a long time.
That's true.
Because you'd have to do that every day if she's not taking it, and you have to do that every time. So is it worth the time?
And it's also tied up. It's also even if you left it there, it'd be tied up. And if you have another mother somewhere where you need it, you're screwed because like you basically have to walk her to the now permanent corral. Like that mobile aspect disappears.
Yeah.
I guess it would just have to be a temporary. It'd be a temporary deal. I don't know. I have to do some thinking about it to see if that'd be a situation where.
Yeah, I wonder if it's one where you could have like corrals, like little pens set up around the farm.
Just a bunch
of gates or cattle panels, and then have it so that you could just back that up to any of those gates. So all you have to do is get them to one of those pens. So like you could put one on Caldwell's, you could put one. Well, we have one on Marshall's.
Yeah.
You can put one on the other side of the creek by that trailer. You could put like little it doesn't take up much space, and then you just back that chute up to it, and then then you can do anything you need to and leave her back in that.
Yeah, that might be a way to do it.
I don't know.
That'd be interesting. I'd love to sit down and look and see what those cost and like what the cost of versus the cost of installing a full blown corral, and that'd be super interesting to see.
There was a guy on YouTube that I saw had one, or someone gave him one to try out. It was the Wyoming Life is his channel. I think you might have seen.
I don't know.
He does,
check him out.
Yeah, he does some cattle. I think he's in obviously Wyoming. I don't know where at in Wyoming, but he was using that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it'd be interesting.
Yeah. And I think it would depend on your farm situation too.
Obviously.
Right? Because we have a bunch of different places that we're going, and if you just had one big farm, is it worth it?
Or if you had like 75 square miles of
you're
nowhere.
Yeah.
Nowhere near a trail. You gotta take it to them.
Yeah.
I think that's where that comes in huge, big advantage.
It's a good discussion though, for sure. But yeah, again, always context dependent. That's what we like to stress.
Someone said Connor is such a great fit. Do you have an Instagram?
I do, but I don't ever use it.
Not
like this.
Not really.
Yeah. All right. What causes random high birth weight calves? Just had to pull a really big one from a heifer. Meanwhile, the rest of the calves from that bull are normal size. It could be the heifer.
Could be the heifer. Yeah.
In that case, I would say that it is the heifer's fault.
Yeah.
Probably.
Yeah.
And maybe it's worth getting rid of that heifer.
Yeah.
That's one. I mean, it depends on if it was because he was big, then that's an issue. But if
it was
because
the heifer's small,
or if it was because the heifer's small, that's.
But it's probably if he's saying it's a big birth weight, it's probably just a bigger calf.
But if it's like the legs twisted or something, that's not necessarily like the heifer's fault or the bull's fault. That's just part of life. Part of like the reproduction and birth cycle is sometimes that stuff happens.
Yeah.
What is it your mom said? Like, for everything to go right is like really
it's a miracle.
Hard. Like it's like everything has to line up, and so if something goes awry and whatever
at any point in the process,
it can happen. And it's not necessarily the cattle's fault or your fault. It could just be it's just.
But the birth weight thing.
That's
probably genetic.
Yeah.
I would assume,
especially if you said that all the other ones were normal birth weight.
Sort of
definitely don't keep that calf as a replacement bull.
Yeah, no. You don't need a big.
It might be worth looking at and getting rid of that heifer, or maybe seeing if she does it again. And if she does it again, then it's definitely her.
Yep.
But.
Yep.
Yeah. Will Connor still get one-on-one intern lesson from Greg? How different is his internship different than usual so far?
So we need to talk to Greg about that for sure, because
just to
remind him, because I think it's something that we talked about this, the three of us. I think it's something we thought was super helpful. Those one-on-one intern lessons on Tuesdays or whenever we got it done. So I mean, if I was in your shoes, I would love to have it.
Learning from him too, because he has a.
Yeah.
I mean, like we've learned a lot from him, but even like we can't replicate what he knows and like how he can just how he can answer questions and stuff. So yeah, that's definitely something. The us staying out another year is new for both. It's new for Greg and Jan too. So it's kind of an experiment. We're seeing how it's working, and so it's working. I mean, I would say it's working good so far.
And I think it'd be. I mean, for me personally, like I definitely want those one-on-one lessons. You know, like I can learn a ton from these guys, but it's also great to have Greg's lessons and perspectives, and he just has so much knowledge, and I'm imagining most of y'all's knowledge comes from
all of it.
Learning from like I don't know how much knowledge you came in with before. And so for me, I'm like I really
not much.
I'm like I really want to do this. So,
we both agree that it's good. It's what.
Yeah.
What's going to be.
And we would even benefit also from those Q&A sessions that Greg does after we do those one-on-one lessons, So that's what we were talking about maybe is, because usually it'll be some sort of topic, kind of like what we do here. It'll be some sort of topic for a chunk, and then it'll be open to like any sort of discussion after that. And so obviously those topics we've already gone through with Greg and taking notes in detail, so they're not as helpful, but they're super helpful for you. And then maybe we jump in later when you're just sort of going back and forth, because we love those situations where we get to just sit down and listen to him go back and forth and talk about a topic. Even if he's just answering your questions, it gets us to think about stuff, So that's why we like this so much.
And like think of it as a year in, as opposed to like
with a whole different angle and light.
We've already seen it happen as opposed to wondering how it's going to happen.
I'm sure it's just like just a ton of information coming in all the time. So it's kind of like, I have to digest it, and then being able to look at it the second time is probably...
And being able to sit down, and at least for me, being able to sit down and look at it on paper and take notes, because you learn stuff in the field, which is always great, experiential stuff, but having like a database of information to go back to and reference, for me, is huge. So, it's a good opportunity.
Your mom said she can hear the peepers.
Yeah, can everybody hear him? My brother
the windows open.
My brother was freaking out about him last time.
Yeah,
but anyway,
that's the joys of gotta love living in the country.
Yeah,
you get the nice.
It's not sirens and like
it's good.
Street lights or whatever.
It's like what's it called, like a sleeping tune, or when people have like play the like running water.
Yeah,
just get to listen to the peepers.
Yeah. And wait till the whippoorwills get going. That could get annoying.
Yeah, but that's cool. That's cool too, though.
Whippoorwill, give it a rest. People know what I'm talking about who live in areas where those birds are a thing.
Do you control how often the guardian dogs breed? If so, is there an ideal time of year to have pups? Don't have pups in the winter if you can avoid it.
If you can avoid it. We had to do that this winter.
And
yeah. So like dogs. Correct me if I'm wrong, Mother. Dogs cycle about every so like twice a year. Female will come into heat, and then it takes about 66 days for that gestation to go through all the way. And so, in theory, you would only be having 2 litters a year, if that's something you're interested in, and you left them out for that long period of time. If I was in your shoes and you were thinking about getting into raising puppies, I would spay my females and/or neuter my males, and find somebody to raise dogs for me, and then buy their puppy crop. So you don't have to deal with the birthing, the whelping, as they would say, process with the dogs. Because that's where it's just a lot of making sure that the mother's okay. You don't want to be breeding, in the middle of the winter. She needs a little situation to get her fed enough, and, she doesn't roll over and kill her puppies and all sorts of stuff. And plus, if the birth doesn't go right, and on and on and on, it's just a lot to manage. So we agree that if we ever do dogs for production, as far as selling them, try to find somebody to raise puppies for you,
or breed them and
sell them as weaned pups.
And then you can train them.
Yeah. Yep.
On a previous video, you mentioned you had to butcher a cow who killed herself in a corral. What happened?
Someone. We must have mentioned that in one of the
videos.
other
day, Greg was with 513. We were talking like, she's pretty docile. Maybe we just leave her, and then we're like, no, we're not gonna leave her in the corral.
Okay, this is. Well, we'll see if I end up posting this one on the YouTube or not. But it's the. It'll be in the big clip. It's fine. It's whatever.
Yeah.
It's
part of life.
It's part of life.
We didn't do it.
We didn't intend to do it. Yeah. Basically, the gist of it is, we had a cow that didn't take her calf. We walked her all the way up to the corral, got her in there, put her in the head catch, let the calf nurse one day, let him back out. Same thing that afternoon. Came back the next morning, did the same thing. Then in the evening we came in. The cow has been chill in the head catch every time. Didn't kick, didn't jump, didn't act weird, nothing. Totally calm. Put her in the head catch. Let the calf at her. Calf went straight to the udder. Started nursing, and we left for 40 minutes to go move the sheep.
Was it the sheep or the mob? I think it was the mob.
The mob. We went and moved the mob for 30 or 40 minutes. Came back. And what the cow had done is she had kicked her. If people were familiar with head catches and shoots and stuff, will sort of understand what I'm saying. But she had her head in the head catch, and the head catch is narrower towards the bottom and it's wide at the top, so that her head stays in one spot. Like when you're dealing with them. She kicked her leg up and over the sidewall of the.
There's like a bar that runs horizontally along.
Over that horizontal bar. She kicked her back leg up and over it and got it caught, and then forced her head down into that narrow part of the head catch, and she suffocated in there just because she was like pinned. Her foot was up and her head was down, and she couldn't get her foot back to right herself and lift her head up, and she must have died minutes before we got there. And so we showed up, and the calf was just sitting in the corner, and the mother was laying there, stone dead in the corral. And this was at 7 o'clock at night in the middle of the summer. Mm-hmm. And so then Greg takes a look at her and is like, well, we're going back to the house and getting the knives. We gotta salvage this.
Meanwhile,
we're like,
we're gonna be up till
midnight. And so we got her out on the ground, and we butchered, as we basically salvaged as much meat off of her shoulder, her neck, her rump, and her loins. We didn't open up her chest cavity or anything like that, because it's a huge animal, and we don't have anything to hang it with or anything like that. So
we basically got the meat without opening the guts, and then we just
flipped her over and did the same thing to the other side.
Yep.
It was probably like 350 pounds of meat, all said and done.
And then we just cut it up that same night. We cut it up into little chunks, got most of the fat out, not most of it, enough of like the gristle and stuff out of it.
Yep.
And then froze it all that night.
And then
the freezer.
Yeah, and then we came back and ground it up and mixed it with a little bit of pastured pork fat, and it was delicious hamburger. And so that was a lesson for sure of how to skin and butcher a full cow on the ground. You
don't do that very often.
Don't do that very often.
You might not get to.
You might not get to do that one, but it was. I hope we don't. But it was.
I kind of hope we don't too.
But we learned a lesson. Greg's like, I've done that a million times in the 20 years that I've run livestock, and that's never happened. And it's just one of those situations. And we talk to people too, and they're like, yeah, we leave them in the head catch all the time for 30, 40 minutes or whatever, just to go and do something and come back. And it's always fine. And it is always fine until it's not. So we'll never do it again. But that's that story. I know I got comments and people were asking about that too, but
it's like you don't want to talk about it, but it's like
the reason why we don't really like to talk about it is because we know that there's certain people out there online that'll just get all bent out of shape about animal rights stuff and like humane things and whatever. And people who know what we do and know Greg knows that those animals live the best life they possibly can.
So spoiled.
And it's just freak accidents like that sometimes happen, and it's just part of the livestock business. And so, but some people don't necessarily understand that. But I know that 99.9% of people that watch this will understand it. So. Anyway, it was
that's the story.
That's the story.
It's a good story.
It's a good story. It was
a good lesson, I should say.
Yeah, it was a tough situation, but those situations are the times when we learn the most. So you don't like it to happen, but we learned a lot from it. in a lot of different aspects.
Yeah.
You want to just do one or two more and then call it?
Have you fixed the washed out bridge yet? No.
No, haven't fixed it.
It's kind of on other land. Yeah.
I don't know if we will fix it. It's going to be hard to fix because the bank eroded out from underneath it. So we need some bridge engineer to figure out how to get that done. I'm half joking. I got a friend. I got some guys I can call. But anyway, yeah, haven't fixed it yet. Got a cracker of a question to finish it off with.
I've got a couple really tough ones. Well, that's a good one. We talked about that today. We've got 3 questions. Okay, let's
do the last 3 and then we'll call it.
Last 3. If any other questions come, we're not going to answer them. Sorry. Would adding a South Pole bull be the easiest way to bring more grass genetics into the herd? Currently have Bonsmara. Is that a cow breed or is that a typo?
I think it's a cow breed.
Yeah.
It sounds familiar.
It sounds kind of familiar, yeah. And want them to be more efficient and smaller. Is it a Heaton breed?
I think it might be.
It
sounds like it. Sounds like it.
Yes, South Pole is sure. South Pole is one of the Bonsmara.
I'm pretty sure I've seen that.
Yeah, I feel like I've seen that too. South Pole is like
be totally wrong.
one of the best grass genetic breeds you can find. Yeah, that's what they were bred for, is to perform on grass. And so yeah, if you're looking for grass genetic to increase the efficiency of your herd and the size, which the size thing is there's some South Poles that are still big, and the reason Greg's your smaller framed is because he's been selectively breeding for that. So in order to get the size down, you've got to make sure you do get
That's the thing. Yeah, Bonsmara cattle breed.
Yeah, smaller size bull.
Interesting.
So,
it's named after Dr. Bonsmara. Interesting. Anyway, we'll have to look into it. But yeah.
So, yeah, we would definitely recommend that.
Yep.
It's good to cross with just about any breed. Some of them don't do great up in like northern climates where it's really cold. Some of them are okay because there's Red Angus and Hereford which can take that kind of weather, and so some of the South Pole bulls that we have could make it in Minnesota, and some of them would freeze to death, and some of them could make it in Florida, and some of them would just overheat, and so it's kind of like a catch-all breed that just performs well on grass, and so
hybrids. That's the way to go.
Mm-hmm.
Purebred situation is always a tricky trap because what you're getting as far as like in theory the traits and characteristics from that animal, but
the problem is sometimes people are more likely, like someone might sell you a bull that's registered that should not ever be sold as a bull because he's not the quality, but he has the genetics
and the lineage
like his father and his mother
are great, or
his
whatever.
Name and his sire are proven, in the breed, but he's a dud of a calf
just from genetic recombination or whatever. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's where the weakness lies.
At the end of the day, the most important thing is an animal that will give you a calf and perform in the environment that it's living in.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't matter if it's purple, white, black, zebra striped, whatever. Mm-hmm. Some are going to be harder to sell than others just based on appearance, but the most important thing is to get them to perform.
Why do we always get into
I know, because it's important. People always are asking it.
I mean, it's good. I mean, it's good.
I'll keep saying it because if I say it in a certain way, it's going to click in someone's head. And then and maybe I'll say it a little bit different next time and it'll get somebody else. So
it's
good. Worth it.
I've read that if a calf is weaned too early, you have to feed grain to get their rumen developed enough to digest grass. Do you know how old they have to be to avoid this?
Yeah,
we talked about this. So most grass-fed producers will wean around 7 months, and a lot of people that are we know a lot of ranchers that they calve in the fall, so that 7 months comes around and the time for weaning, they're in line for spring grass. So that calf is getting weaned at the optimum grass growing conditions and the best feed value, and so 7 months. You can wean on grass. That I think 4 months is when it was something like 4 months when, because remember when John and Monica were looking it up for Susie. It's like 4 months when the rumen is developed enough that it doesn't need milk. The only problem with that is it needs some kind of the calf needs some kind of like high
level of nutrition
in order to make it, because that milk is offering such a, it's really helping that animal. And if you take that away from them, yes, they can survive on the grass, but they're not going to perform, and they're never going to live up to what their genetic potential.
Because like in that time period when they're 4 months old, they're eating a lot of forage, but they're also just getting a little supplementation of milk the whole time. So it's almost like the grain supplementation that they would need is the milk. Yeah. And so when you take that away, they're sort of, they're walking with like a leg and a half, so to speak.
And so like in Greg's scenario, a calf born in the spring, it hits 7 months old by
July, August, September,
October.
Yeah.
So like October, November, it hits 7 months. Yeah, we could wean it, but there's no point in us weaning it yet. So we let the cows take that calf through the winter on they're only producing a little bit of milk, just enough to that calf gets a little bit of, nutrients, so that 7 months, they could be weaned, they can make it on the grass through the winter, but then they're getting that milk, so it's almost like feeding them grain, but it's like,
The whole weaning situation is a great topic because it's really nuanced. Because then it's like during that winter period, that mother is being asked to do a lot,
right?
And some people would argue, that's too much. Like you're being too hard. You got to give her a break.
So she'll breed
back. So she'll breed back. But if you design your management style for that, and you call mothers that don't fit into that don't perform. It's going to be easy peasy for people who actually wean.
We had a mother that her calf died yesterday.
Yeah.
She couldn't make it through the winter. She was thin going into the spring.
Yep.
She calved a week ago. Her calf was thin because she didn't have she had access to the same amount of forage as everybody else. Everybody else is looking fat, in good condition. And she looks like a Jersey cow. Nothing against Jersey cows.
Yeah, but it's not in a beef operation.
Breed, you don't want them to look like a Jersey cow.
Yeah.
And so, she's gonna go. She's already she wrote her name down on the list, and she's gonna
go to town. But we'll talk about weaning again because there's more to it. But when yes or no, or when we do it and when we don't, and that whole deal, because it's an interesting discussion for sure. Mm-hmm. But I think that's about it.
One more.
Okay.
Will Greg ever sit in on a live stream?
It's going to happen in the future.
Yes.
I will make sure that...
You stay tuned.
Stay tuned. I will make sure that I make announcements from every hillside using smoke signals and the whole deal that he's going to be on one of these. It'll happen eventually. We're just going to we're waiting for the right moment and the right opportunity, because it's going to be a juicy one if we can get him on.
It's going to be... we've got something in the work. We
got
something in our mind.
We got something in our mind. So stay tuned. In the next couple months, we'll see if we can get it done.
Yes, Ben's mom is a vet.
Yes, she is. Mostly does dogs and cats, but obviously she knows about stuff in general. But yeah.
That is it, everybody.
Thanks for watching. That was probably the longest one we've ever done.
No, we didn't start at 7:30.
We started at 7:45. It's 9 o'clock.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
We did a long one the other day. But
yeah. Okay. It's gonna be up there. It's at the top. It's gonna be up there. It was a good one. Thanks for joining. We'll be here same time, same place next week. Look for announcements. I forget sometimes. Didn't announce it. Seems like everybody found it. Look for it on YouTube by Saturday. Usually I'll post it on Saturday. This is also available as a podcast everywhere you listen to podcasts, so check that out. And yeah, go follow Isaac on Instagram at Isaac Tappenden.
Yeah. At
Isaac Tappenden, his full name.
My name nothing.
And I think that's about it. I mean, Connor, you got anything to plug? You got any closing thoughts?
You can follow me at, you can request to follow me. I might accept it. It's at Helton Connor. But,
alrighty. You got any thoughts? Any?
I'm gonna send you. I don't think I have you.
We'll let you close it out. What do you any thoughts for the people out there?
Thanks for watching. I'm excited to learn from these guys. Honestly, these sessions are really good for me too. I'm learning a ton just by hearing them talk.
Don't you worry. In a couple months, you're gonna be sitting front and center.
Yeah.
So hopefully in a couple months, I can bring you guys some value.
No, you had some good points. About,
you did, yeah, for sure.
About the noticing the cows with the
that are getting close. Yeah. Anyway,
I found it.
Good stuff.
I found it.
He found it. All right. We'll see everybody later.